Cranberry and Walnut Rugelach. How crazy good do these guys look? Sally, that girl, in the kitchen.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally, that girl, in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make cranberry and walnut rugelach. Who doesn't love rugelach? It is absolutely delicious. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, it is a cookie that is filled with either fruit and nuts or chocolate or cinnamon and nuts. It's made in a ton of different varieties. But for today, I'm going to be going with cranberry and walnut, and I'm going to cook those up with some orange juice, and it's just going to be so delicious. And of course, that cookie, that crust itself is going to be flaky and perfect. And I've decided to go with cranberry because we are approaching Thanksgiving, so why not? At any time of the year, cranberry is absolutely delicious, so I figured let's go for it. So I'm super excited to teach you how to make this. So let's not wait another second and let's get started.
For the filling part of today's recipe, you will need 18 ounces of dried cranberries, also known as craisins, 12 ounces of orange juice, 12 ounces of water, or enough to cover the dried cranberries once you've already added the orange juice, 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon powder, 3/4 of a cup of walnuts, and 14 ounces of jellied cranberry sauce. Now, I will mention that with this amount of filling, you will have plenty of filling left over. So you can choose to cut this part of the recipe in half and do half of the filling, or of course, you can double up on the dough recipe. The dough recipe I'm going to be giving you will make about 32 cranberry and walnut rugelach, but you can probably make up to 64 with this amount of filling. So I like to have the extra filling and just use it as a cranberry sauce because it's absolutely delicious, but I did want to mention that. And for the dough part of this recipe, you will need 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, plus some more as needed, 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, 8 ounces of cream cheese, 16 tablespoons or 2 sticks of salted butter, which is going to stay cold until the last minute. It should stay in the fridge, and 1 egg yolk. Now, as I said, this will make 32 cranberry and walnut rugelach, or of course, it may vary depending on the size of your rugelach. You will also need a sharp knife and a rolling pin, a small bowl, some dry measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a medium-sized bowl and a spoon, another clean spoon, 2 cookie sheets or baking trays, but make sure they're really large or you may need more than 2. And you will need some parchment paper and some plastic wrap. And you will need a food processor, and I'm also using a blender, but you could use the food processor to make both the filling and the dough. You would just have to wash it in between. Or alternately, as I am doing, you could just use a blender for your filling. You will also need a can opener, and you'll need some oven mitts, and you'll need some tongs or a spatula to remove the hot cranberry and walnut rugelach from the trays, and you'll also need a cooling rack. And finally, you'll need a medium-sized pot with a lid, as we will make the filling on the stove. So we're going to first start with our filling, but you could start with your dough, as the dough will have to sit in the refrigerator for an hour or 2. So if you choose to start with your dough, you can just skip ahead to the dough section and then come back to make your filling. So I'm going to start with the filling. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my dried cranberries to my medium-sized pot, and I'm going to place that on my stove. And then right on top of that, I'm going to add my sugar. And on top of that, I am going to add my cinnamon. And then I am going to add my 1/8 teaspoon of salt, which is just a little pinch. And then I'm going to add some pure vanilla extract, and it's already smelling incredible. Smells like holidays in here. So now I'm going to be adding my orange juice, and I'm using a 12-ounce bottle of pure orange juice. And then what I'll do is I'll use that same bottle and I'll fill it with another 12 ounces of water, because based on the size of my pan, this is just about the right amount of water that I'm going to need to just cover the cranberries. But of course, the amount of water could vary depending on how wide your pan is. So just adjust the water to make sure you've covered the cranberries in liquid. And then what I do is I just give it all a good stir to make sure to combine all of the ingredients. So then what you're going to want to do is turn your stove on. And so you can set it to low, or if you have a simmer setting, then I like to go with a medium simmer, but if not, low is perfectly fine. And then what you're going to want to do is just let it sit and just start to bubble up just a touch. It's going to take about 15 minutes or so, depending of course on the heat of your stove, for you to just start to see a little bit of bubbling. And then what you want to do is put your lid on and just vent it for some steam to escape. And it's going to take about another 30 minutes for the liquid to absorb. So it's going to take a total of 45 minutes to cook the filling. So I like to use that time to cut my cold butter up into some small cubes, but then I put that right back into the refrigerator. And then I also cut up my cream cheese, but the cream cheese doesn't have to be that cold. I find that sometimes the food processors can get a little stuck if the cream cheese is too cold. So it's okay if you want to leave that out. And then every once in a while, you're just going to come over and you're going to check on these cranberries and give them a little stir. And what you're going to notice is that those craisins, those dried cranberries, become rehydrated and they start to plump up. And then that liquid is just being totally absorbed by these delicious cranberries. And it's just creating the most aromatic, incredible filling for your rugelach. Between the vanilla and the cinnamon, the smell in here is divine. So just come and check it out every so often. So while this is cooking, I'm going to take advantage and I'm going to start prepping my blender for the rest of the ingredients for the filling. So I'm going to be using a can of jellied cranberry sauce. There's 14 ounces in this can, and I'm adding the whole thing right into my blender. And as I said, you could also use your food processor for this, that's fine. Then right on top of that jellied cranberry sauce, I'm gonna add my walnuts. And then I'm just gonna wait until my cranberries that I am cooking are ready. So I'm gonna give it another little stir, and you'll notice how the liquid is being absorbed, the cranberries are plumping up, and it's looking and smelling amazing. It's not ready just yet, so I'm gonna give it just a little more time to do its magic. And here we go. The water, the orange juice, the vanilla, the cinnamon, all of it has infused these cranberries, and now it's nice and thick and there's hardly any liquid left. So now I'm going to turn off my stove, and now the cranberries are ready. And all I'm going to do now is just stir them a bit and allow that steam to escape, because what I want to do is to cool the cranberries down a bit. I don't want to add them to my blender when they're steaming hot. Now I've allowed my cranberries to cool down, and I'm going to add them right on top of those walnuts that we had added to the blender. And then I'm just going to pour all of them in, and I'm going to use my spoon to just kind of make sure that it all gets incorporated. And then I'm going to start to blend all of my ingredients together. I am pulsing and I'm using the puree setting. And every so often I come over and I give it all a stir, because I want to make sure that those walnuts get to the bottom. And so do those amazing dried cranberries that we just cooked. They're all smelling so delicious together. The scent is just so absolutely incredible. It's aromatic and just fruity and with that cinnamon and the vanilla. It's just a delicious smell and is going to be an incredible filling for our rugelach. So that's it. It's ready. We've blended it all together. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove it from my blender, and I'm just going to put it into a medium-sized bowl with the help of a spoon. And I'm going to use that same spoon to then use this filling in my rugelach. So you see how beautiful and thick it is. And of course, that beautiful color is amazing. This really is going to make a really incredible rugelach. Now, since I worked on my filling first, I'm going to move on to work on my dough. So I'm just going to let this sit until I'm ready to come back to it. So I have already cut up my cream cheese, and now I added my flour to my food processor, and then right on top of my flour I'm going to add that touch of salt, and then I'm going to also add an egg yolk. I have eliminated the egg white, I've separated it, and I'm only adding the yolk into the food processor. I will not be using the egg white. So now, once all of the yolk is in, then what I'm going to start doing is adding my cream cheese, which I have cut up into more manageable chunks. It just helps really combine better when you cut it up into smaller pieces. So I'm going to start with 4. I'm going to blend that in, and then little by little, I will add the rest of the pieces. Of course, if you're using a larger food processor, you could likely put all 8 pieces in at once. And yes, I should have probably gone with a larger food processor, but I'm going to make it work. So I added my first 4, and then of course, as the ingredients combine, the level of the flour will go down, and it's going to be easier for me to add more ingredients to it because it is going to start to form a dough. Right now it's still in a loose powder form, but you're going to see as we add our pieces of cream cheese, and soon as we add our cold butter that we have cut up and is in the refrigerator, it is going to start to form a really incredible dough. So all I do now is I grab that cold butter that's been cut into some cubes, and then I just start adding it right in, and I continue to let the food processor do its job. All it's doing is incorporating all of this incredible butter into the mixture, and this is going to make that rugelach dough perfect. It's going to be flaky, and it's just going to have the perfect consistency, and keeping it cold really helps. So now I'm almost done adding my butter, and you're going to notice that once all the butter has been added, it forms the most incredible dough that is going to be just perfect for our rugelach. But the dough does need to be refrigerated. Once it comes together, we still want to put it back into the fridge, because the key to a delicious, flaky, perfect rugelach is for that dough to be cold. We want that butter that we have just incorporated into this dough to be nice and cold when we go to work on it. So all I've done is I've turned out the contents of my food processor onto my very clean counter, and all I'm doing is just making sure that all those pieces of butter are well incorporated. I've made a ball, and then I'm going to cut this ball into 4 pieces because I am going to be refrigerating this dough. As I said, I want it to be nice and cold when I'm going to go roll it out, but I do want to cut it first in 4 portions. It's going to make it much easier to work with this way, and you'll soon see why. So I'm kind of stacking them up in a rectangular shape because I am going to be rolling them out into somewhat of a rectangle. But if you want to go with a crescent type of rugelach, then you would be rolling these out into a circle. So then you'll be making circular discs instead. So you're going to do it for all 4. And in my case, as I said, I'm going to do rectangles because I'm going to show you the type of rugelach that I'm going to be making. And then I'm going to leave it in the fridge for 2 hours. And after 2 hours, then I've cleaned up my counter, and now I've dusted my counter, and I'm turning my oven on to 350 degrees to preheat. And I'm going to pull out one of those doughs. I'm only pulling the dough out one at a time because I want it to stay cold until I'm ready to work on it. And I've sprinkled the counter, the rolling pin, and the dough itself with a little bit of flour. I just grabbed a spoon and sprinkled. And then I'm going to grab my rolling pin and I'm going to press down onto the dough. And yes, it's a bit rigid because it has been in the refrigerator for about 2 hours. And then all I want to do is use that rolling pin, and then I just turn the dough around as I need to. And what I'm trying to do is thin out this dough. So you just turn it as you go and then just press down with the rolling pin. And what you're trying to do is to keep somewhat of a rectangular or oval shape. And of course, if you need to cut off a piece of dough and add it to the opposite side to just kind of even things out, that's fine. This dough is super malleable and it's very forgiving, but what you're looking to do is make somewhat of an oval or rectangular shape. So once you've rolled out your first piece, you're just going to want to grab a few heaping tablespoonfuls of this delicious cranberry and walnut filling that we created. And you're just going to use the back of the spoon and you're just going to spread the filling out all over the dough. You're just going to take it almost all the way out to the edge of the dough. And then once you've spread that out really nicely, then we're going to roll our dough to make the shape of rugelach that I prefer. But of course, if you wanted to do this circular instead, you'd make a circle and cut it into pie slices, thin pie slices, and you can make little crescent rolls instead. But see, I do it this way and I just roll the whole roll out because I just love this shape of rugelach. It's the one we prefer around here, so this is the way I usually go. So what I do is I just grab the upper edge very gently of the dough with my fingers and release it from my counter, and then I'm just folding the dough over itself and over that delicious, tangy, aromatic, divine cranberry and walnut filling. And then I'm just going to snip off the very end because I just don't like uneven rugelach. And then I'm going to portion this out. So what I like to do is I just cut it right down the middle, and then I cut it again in half. Then the other piece I'll do again in half. And then each 4 of these pieces I will cut again in half. So I've made 8 rugelach out of this one particular roll. So I have 3 more rolls in the refrigerator, and I'm going to be getting 8 pieces out of each roll. So once I've rolled them up, then I'm just going to put them seam side down onto a tray that I've prepared with some parchment paper. And then of course I put that seam side down because as they bake, that way they seal up really nicely. And then they have that beautiful swirl going throughout. They look absolutely gorgeous, and when they bake up, they're going to look even better. And of course, they're going to taste incredibly good. So I've done 1 roll, and then I'm going to move on and repeat the process for my second, third, and 4th roll. I just do the same exact thing. I sprinkle my counter, I open up my dough, roll it in a little bit of flour, make sure that there's flour on my rolling pin on the dough, and then I just roll it out, and I'm going to fill it the same way I did with my first roll of dough. Now I'll show you one more time how I roll it out and cut it, just so that you get a real clear picture of how it works. And you'll notice that I still had plenty of room on my large tray so that I'm able to put the 8 pieces that I'm going to be cutting out of this second roll onto that first very large tray. So I've cut off a piece from each end. I've divided my dough into 8 portions, and then I'm going to have 8 beautiful spiral rugelach that I'm going to add onto that first prepared tray. And then I will have half of my rugelach done, but you can, of course, put them into the oven at this point if you wanted to and bake off 1 tray, but nothing will happen to them if you let them sit while you roll your other 2 rolls out and prepare your second tray. So what I like to do is I leave 2 racks in the oven, and I just put them as well as I can in the center of the oven, and then I make all 4 of my rolls. So in other words, I prepare 1 full tray with half of them and the other full tray with the other half, and then I bake all of them at once. But that, of course, is totally up to you. You can bake your first tray and then do your second, or you can do as I'm doing and just make all 4 rolls, cut them all up into pieces, prepare both trays, and bake them together. Now I'm going to show you just how great this filling looks. Look at that incredible red, gorgeous cranberry filling. These are going to be such a hit because yes, rugelach is an amazing cookie to begin with, but when you make it with this cranberry walnut filling, everyone is going to be in awe. They're going to want you to make them all of the time, and they're really not that difficult to make, and the result is pretty amazing. They're just spectacular. So now I pulled out that 4th and last piece of dough out of the refrigerator, and I've filled it and I've rolled it, and now I'm cutting up the last 8 pieces of rugelach to add it to my second prepared tray. And then I'm going to be popping these babies into the oven. And if I think the kitchen is smelling amazing already, it's just going to get all that much better once we bake these guys. This is going to be spectacular. So they're all ready. They're all laid out. I have both of my trays, and look at how cute they're looking. Already they look remarkable, and they are raw. So when they are baked, you can just imagine how great they're going to look. So now we're going to pop these into the oven. As I said a moment ago, I left 2 racks in the oven, and I'm going to put one on top and one underneath, and then I'm going to set a 30-minute timer. So please note that these can take up to 40 minutes to get to the desired color, but I like to set a 30-minute timer, and that way I take a look at what color they've gotten and I decide how much longer I want to leave them in the oven. So I start with 30 minutes, and halfway through, when I'm at about a 15-minute point or 20 minutes, I then switch the racks and I move the top rack to the bottom and the bottom rack to the top. So I give it a full 30 to 40 minutes to bake. And after they are golden, then I'm going to pull them out. In my case, I left them all the way to 40 minutes, but that is going to vary depending on your oven. Some ovens run hotter and some a little cooler. I was using my lower oven, and that one tends to be a little cooler than my top oven. So now they are ready. They smell incredible. The kitchen smells amazing. It smells like every holiday you want to imagine. It smells like cinnamon and like cranberry, and it just smells like fresh baked goods. It smells like holiday. It smells like Thanksgiving. And of course, it's rugelach. It's your beautiful, typical Jewish cookie with cranberry as a filling, cranberry and walnut. So I like to let these guys sit right on their baking tray for at least about 5 minutes before I remove them from the tray onto a cooling rack. Then you can use a pair of tongs the way I'm doing, or a spatula, whatever you prefer, and just place them all onto the cooling rack and allow them to cool a bit before you indulge. But look at how gorgeous these are. This is why we prefer this particular style, because when you roll them up, they become the most adorable, beautiful spirals filled with fruit and walnut, and then they have that golden, flaky cookie crust that is just like nothing else. Rugelach is just a special cookie in and of itself, and when you fill it with that cranberry and walnut, it becomes even more spectacular. So now I've allowed them to cool, and I've transferred them onto a serving platter. And tell me that that is not inviting. That looks beautiful at any holiday table. You can serve this for any occasion during the entire year. You don't have to wait for Thanksgiving. These would be amazing for any holiday. So I am so excited to bite into one. I'm going to pick this one because it's looking all pretty and it's just calling my name. And just look at that gorgeous spiral and that beautiful golden color it's got on top. And now look at that crust, how flaky it is. It literally is just flaking right off. That's that butter and that cream cheese that we use to make that dough. It's just the perfect consistency and it's the perfect bite. Amazing. So tasty. It's got that sweetness, but that tartness that the cranberry brings. And it's got that walnut running throughout and those beautiful layers of that beautiful pastry. It's just so delicious. It's really perfect. Just sweet and tart all together. It's really good. I need to take another bite. I mean, I can't stop. So good. Oh my, you are going to love this. If you love rugelach, or even if you've never tried rugelach, cranberry and walnut rugelach, that is where it's at. This is some really good rugelach.
So how incredible do these cranberry and walnut rugelach look? Tell me they are not super inviting. They are so yummy and the pastry is perfect and that cranberry and walnut filling is spectacular. And it's such a fun way to integrate cranberry into a meal, and it's unexpected, but it's super delicious with its tartness and sweetness. It's just perfect. I absolutely love it, and I know you will too. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're gonna have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to my channel and to touch that little notification bell so that you get a notice every time I put up a recipe. And I do so often, and you will see I have tons of delicious recipes on my channel. If you travel over to my video tab, you will see a ton of recipes already there. I have all types of recipes: sweets, desserts, appetizers, main dishes, side dishes, vegetables, everything, anything you can think of, it's there. And I'm always putting new stuff up, so I'm sure you're going to love them. And if you're not already following me on social media, be sure to follow Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and on Pinterest. And you can follow me as Sally That Girl FL on Twitter, Snapchat, and on TikTok. See you next time.
Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.